Bridget Andrzejewski, welcome to the Soccer Queens podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
So, we are Maryland buddies. I grew up in Howard County and you grew up, was it Baltimore
Yeah.
County?
Yep.
That's it. And then you played at McDonough, right?
Yeah, I was pre-first all the way to graduation at McDonough.
Oh my gosh. So I is it McDonough or McDonough? Because that's one thing I never could get right.
Oh, no, it's McDonough.
Got it. Okay. Well, regardless, a great high school soccer program, and then you played club, then you went on to play at UNC for Anson Dorrance. So I'm just really excited because a lot of girls listening want to play at UNC. I think that's like everyone's dream growing up to wear the Carolina blue. And I just really want you to shed light on your journey to get there. And let's start with your childhood. When did you start playing soccer? When did you switch to travel and start getting serious? Like, how did all of this unfold?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm the youngest out of my siblings. So my brother's 8 years older, my other brother's 10 years older, my sister is 13 years older. So I'm the youngest. My two siblings played soccer. So my brother played at Stevenson. So I would drive home on the bus when I was little from McDonough, get dropped off in front of Stevenson. And at that time it was called Villa Julie, and I would watch my brother play college soccer. So I was always on the sidelines watching him play. And then my sister went to McDonough as well. She played soccer there. And then she went to Maryland and then Loyola. So I was surrounded by soccer all of the time. So I was constantly watching it. And I feel like I just naturally just started playing. My sister would help me train. My dad was always my like biggest fan and always helped me. He's my best friend. So he really helped me a lot, and I think I just fell in love with the sport, and I never went to go out on the soccer field feeling like I had to play, or I never looked forward to practice. Like I always just loved playing, and it was almost like an innocence. Like at that time I didn't know my talent at all. And one of the stories my dad always says is when I was like super little, maybe 6 or 7 or something, we were playing and I took the ball down the sideline, and this was at Ridgely Middle School. And I took the ball down the sideline, and instead of just going to the goal and trying to shoot it, I crossed it perfectly in front of the goal for the girl to just tap it in. And ever since that play, my dad knew I had something special, and parents would come up to my parents saying, "Oh, your kid is so good." But like I never knew. I was so little. I had no idea I had no idea like everything that was going to transpire from everything. So yeah. So that's how that all first started. And then then I started playing travel soccer with LTSC. So or LTRC, that's what it was called back in the day.
Is
So
that Lutherville or
yeah, Lutherville
yeah,
Timonium Soccer, um rec soccer, yeah.
yeah.
So that's the team I started playing for. My dad was my first soccer coach. And then when I was 9, that's when I transitioned. I think it was like, yeah, like 9-ish, I transitioned to club soccer. And as seeing the soccer world, I think it's super important to make sure that you don't stay in a spot where you're comfortable at. And I think that's why it's really important to have parents that push you out of your comfort zone. Because for me, like, I can't decide what I'm going to do when I'm 9, like, to go on a different team. So it's good that my parents, push me to go in this club with all these new girls. And I'm just going to tryouts, not like I said, I'm just innocent, not thinking anything of it. And that's how I started my club career. I started with PSC, which is like it was basically like the first team. So that was Parkville Soccer Club. And then I was on there for a while and everything. And then club soccer, that's really where I started getting more noticed and whatnot, going to Maryland State Cup. ODP was like a really big thing back in the day. I know it's kind of like dwindled out a little bit. I don't know. Do you think it has dwindled out a little bit? I don't know.
Yeah, it has, but back in the day, it was, like, the big thing, like, if you were on ODP, you were, like, so freaking good, you were, like, top of the top, but now it's more, like, ECNL or, US Youth National Team, US National ID Camp, but yeah, ODP was, like, you were legit.
Yeah, and I think the ODP system was such a beautiful system because, like you mentioned, there's so many different avenues, like the National League. I don't even know. There's so many different leagues now, and ODP really kept everything so simple where you would try out for the Maryland team, and then you would go to the regional team if you made that. So you would go to a camp in Rhode Island, and then you would make the
Oh,
region
that
team.
camp.
I know, right?
Dreaded summer camp at where was it?
It was like
University
Rhode
of Rhode
Island.
Island?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, so that camp was great because you had the opportunity to make the regional pool and then the national pool. Now, did you make both of those?
So I played like 3 years up when I was an ODP. So the funny thing is that when I started playing real like higher up, like 3 years up, I would dread going to ODP practice because I would just get pushed around. I mean, I'm okay to admit this. I would cry before like going to the practices. Like, Dad, I don't want to go. Like, I'm just getting pushed around.
Wait, that's so crazy because I cried going to ODP. I don't know what it was, but, like,
I
everyone
know.
everyone was just so good. Like, you just got so nervous, like
Yeah, exactly. It was definitely just like a different atmosphere. And like everyone, I mean, especially if you're playing 3 years up, I mean, these girls are hitting puberty way before I am. I'm not there yet. So they're a lot taller than I am. And but yeah, I mean, I think that really helped me get out of my comfort zone. So yeah, ODP, I was like I was saying, we went to Rhode Island, did the regional pool, but I like I said, I played up, so I didn't make those. I would be sitting in the crowd, I'd be watching the people get picked and it was always just like a sour feeling. You're like, I want to be up there. And eventually it happened. And I went to regional, and then I got invited to national camp. So I went to so I was the first time I started with my US career was when I was 12. So that's when I started going to US camps. And this is when I would fly by myself as a 12-year-old to California, to the Olympic Center. That's where we would train and everything. And I was a little kid, like, why am I flying across the country? You just don't conceptualize until you get older. You just don't conceptualize, like, I was 12 years old, only US team, like USU team, traveling to California, like traveling to all these places, like going to Mexico where we would play, Japan, Costa Rica, Mexico. And when you look back, you're like, wow, that's actually really cool. But in that moment, I just, for me, like personally, maybe other girls are completely different and were more mature at 12 and realized it was more of a bigger deal. But I was just kind of going with the flow with everything. I was excited to go and whatnot, but it was definitely something that was challenging. I would, be away from my family at such a young age, which was hard for me. It still is. I'm 20, I just turned 27, and it still is hard to be away from my family. So I can only imagine as a 12-year-old. But that's when it all started with the US team when I was 12, and it was an incredible experience.
I really like that innocence. It just seems like you, like, at a young age, just played just for the pure joy of it, and you weren't really, like, putting too much pressure on yourself, like, "Oh, I need to, like, get the scholarship or do this or that." Was that ever in the back of your mind, or did you just kinda stumble across, like, Anson being like, "Hey, we want you"?
Yeah, I mean, it never it I mean, I have a book where those posters that said "got milk" and you put like a mustache, like milk mustache over your lip, and that was like the thing. So I think I was in first or second grade, and I have the poster like in my old room. My mom keeps it up still. I'm like holding a Mia handbook, and it says like, and the thing says "got books?" question mark. That was like a McDonough thing they did when I was in first or second grade, and it just is cool to look back. But no, I when I was young, like I never thought about, I'm going to go to UNC. And it's funny too because my sister, being 13 years older than me, she went through all of that because she played with the US team as well. So she went through all that, and she said, I'm going to call her out right now. She was like, I'm not going to UNC because it's just all these really good players, and I want to like go to a school where I can stand out. That was like her thing. I want to get that attention. I want to feel noticed. And so I had this thing against UNC because my sister didn't want to go there. So I never like thought about it. But then when I got older, I was like, oh my gosh, like UNC is the place to go. And so I actually was on tour with Mal Pugh when she was doing her tour as well. We were actually being recruited at the same time. And this was back like in high school. But my first scholarship letter, before I get into that, my first scholarship letter was Syracuse when I was a freshman. So I remember like, or no, I think I was in eighth grade. And I remember posting it on my Instagram. I had Instagram back in the day. You can look at my Instagram now. It says I have 600 posts. It's literally from middle school. And I totally probably still have that letter. But I took a picture. I was like, oh my gosh, my first letter for soccer. But even then, I just didn't realize it was almost like like that innocence. I keep bringing that up, but I just played soccer because I love to play and I just happened to be good at it. And like these opportunities came about. And then that's when I got, um, uh, Anson saw me because I know that was one of the things you mentioned. Anson saw me at US camp. And one of the things that he loved about me was right when the kickoff happened, I took the ball down the side and took a shot, and then they came back, countered, and I sprinted all the way back to get back on defense. And he like that was like the one thing that he remembered from that U.S. camp. And U.S. camps were terrifying because there was probably hundreds of college coaches on the sideline. But as a kid, you're like going in like, oh, there's college coaches. But I mean, being 12 years old and like and up, you don't really think like, where am I going to go to play college until high school hits when you start getting more of that attention. So yeah.
That is so wild, and I'm sure you got a lot of other colleges interested in you. So you had that Syracuse letter freshman year. What were some other ones that you got?
Yeah, so I mean it was pretty much like I don't even remember a lot. I know that the top 3 schools that I ended up choosing on was UCLA. I scratched that off because it was just too far for me. And then UVA, which was like a really close, like I mean UNC and UVA were like super close for me. UVA was close to home. It had like the same McDonough colors. And
And
um
Steve Swanson, I
yeah,
believe he's still there.
yeah, he is.
He's
Yeah.
great. I know the girls really liked him.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
awesome, he's awesome. All the girls I know that've gone there, they really like him. And then it was really between UVA and UNC, that was, like, the last 2 schools, but I also looked at Penn State as well, more so, like, in the very beginning before I even looked at UNC, I did a tour and everything like that. But, yeah, I mean, all the campus or the schools I was, interested in, we looked at the campuses with my parents. I would go with my parents, they would take us to the whole campus, and it was a really cool experience, like, having that attention, like, "We really want you to play here."
Now, what was the thing that you were like, "Okay, I'm going to play at UNC?" Did it take some convincing from Anson, or was it something you just came to on your own?
I remember when the recruiting coach, Chris Ducar, he actually also came to my wedding along with Anson, but he was like the recruiter at the time. And I remember he was just really on me about you'll really make a difference here at UNC. Like we would love to have you. And then I remember going on the tour at UNC and it was just so cool to see all the trophies, all the success, everything. We went through like the basketball museum too. I remember doing that and I was like, that's so cool. And I loved the campus. It was beautiful. And I met with the players and everything. And it was super, super cool. I actually watched one of their games at home while I was there. Because on these tours, they always want to make sure there's a home game so you can see them play. And I just was like, okay, I can see myself going here for sure.
Yeah, it must have been such a cool experience to see how good pretty much all the sports were.
Yeah, it really was. It was awesome for sure.
Now, a lot of girls listening do want to play at UNC, but I really want to put things into perspective for them with how competitive it is and just the type of caliber of player Anson is looking for. Do most players on UNC, or at least who were on the team when you were on the team, were they pretty much national team players, youth national team players?
Yeah, I would say pretty
Yeah.
much I mean, everyone. I mean, he did have people that came on that weren't on full scholarship, but that came on the team. But most of everyone I saw at US camps that I mean, I was 12 and up with them, and a couple of us, like my best friend Zoe, she was at US camp with me. Maddie Schultz, these are girls in my class, like, and you knew the girls that were getting recruited because of the whole US system. You knew even the girls that were older, like she just committed there and everything. So we would always watch to see our friends from the US environment, seeing where they got where they decided to go. And it was really cool because like, oh, she went to FSU, oh, she went to UNC, oh, she went to UVA. And it's kind of put more things in perspective when you're a little younger, seeing these people from the US cycle go and start committing to colleges. And that was like, okay, I think I need to like decide on a school. So that's when I verbally committed sophomore year to UNC. That was when I decided to go there.
Okay, that's good to know. I figured most girls on the roster are US Youth National Team or at least high school All-Americans.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I just want to inform people because I see a lot of girls who are on, like, the 3rd team in their club and hardly play, and they're like, "I wanna play at UNC," and I'm like, "That's great." Like, it's great to reach high, but at the same time, when you're, like, picking, like, the ID camps to go to, like, you don't wanna waste, like, your time and money because the recruiting has changed now, and you have to go to ID camps and be really intentional with what you're picking. It's so different now. I'm almost, like, glad I got out when I did.
Yeah. No, that's a really, really good point you make too, because there will be girls that go to UNC and they won't have playing time. And Anson is extremely straightforward. He takes like the girls into the office like one on one and says, "Hey, you're as you can see, you're not getting playing time. I think it's in your best interest to go to a different school next year." And he is extremely straightforward. So we see a lot of girls get out of UNC program because they're not getting playing time, and they would be more happier themselves get like going to a different school and playing 90 minutes versus playing 10 minutes or 0.
Yes.
So we saw a lot of that, people coming in and out going to different schools because of them choosing UNC because they were interested, but they went into the program not getting playing time. And I think it's definitely smart to like worry about your mental health for sure and making sure UNC is a great program, like the best school. I love it. No, like the best. But if you love soccer and you want to make as much out of it and you're not getting playing time at UNC, then it's best to probably transfer out. And that's something that Anson will specifically talk about. But there's also girls that don't get playing time. They come in as freshmen and whatnot. They're not used to it because they do come from the US pool and everything. And those girls are girls that earn their playing time as they get a lot better. So those girls Anson doesn't talk to because they have so much potential. But it's the girls that are he can kind of see that early on. That's something Anson's really good at. He sees it early on, like, okay, this is not your environment. Let's look at other schools. And he helps those girls like look at other schools and other options and everything.
Yeah, that's really great, and honestly, I think people just need to know themselves. Like, some people, they want to play all 4 years. They want to start, they don't want to be on the bench, and then some girls are like, "Screw it. I'll wear the Carolina blue and not get playing time," and that's fine. Like, you just have to know yourself, and if, like, you're okay to do that for 4 more years and just have great training, have good coaching, and just be a part of the team. But that's part of the reason why I played Division 3 at Johns Hopkins. I'm like, I don't know if I'm gonna play as much elsewhere." So, you just have to know yourself and what you want, and it is another 4 years, and you do have to think really deeply about it. But you got a lot of playing time. You had a great career when you were there. So how did you prepare going in?
So going in, I mean, I all through high school, I played in a summer league and it was semi-pro. So it was with a bunch of girls that came back from college and would and play. And my sister actually played in it too. She was on my team. But I constantly made sure that I wasn't just training, like obviously a lot, but I was playing 11v11. I was in that playing 90 minutes, getting my actual real game time fitness in. So that was one of the big things, making sure I was getting games in because that's when I could really evaluate myself of like, okay, what do I need to focus on? So when I did have those training times by myself, that I could know exactly what I need to do to get better and to get prepared for UNC by having those like 11v11 games. So I think that was super important to make sure that you're constantly playing, not just training.
Did you do anything outside of the 11v11 games, like any, like, strength, speed, and agility?
Yeah, so I started lifting. I went to just a local gym and I started lifting. I think I was a sophomore. So that's when I started lifting. I started doing a lot of, new stuff as someone young, just playing a sport your whole life. You're like, "Oh, wow, lifting, that's something new." So I would do lifting. I would do speed and agility. That was something that I also did as well. And I think that's like super important because one of the biggest things Anson loves to recruit are athletes, just like overall athletes. Like you can put them in like play basketball and they're so good at basketball. Like, and that's the thing for me that I think one thing I left out, not just playing soccer growing up, but I played every sport growing up. And when I canceled my sports, of having to just focus on soccer, that was freshman year of high school. So I was playing lacrosse, I was playing basketball, I was playing softball, and I think that made me this like great athlete. And Anson loves athletes.
Yeah, I did forget to ask you about that with your childhood. I mean, I figured you kinda dabbled, but yeah, lacrosse and basketball are so transferable to soccer. I don't think people realize it, and I think now a lot of, like, parents of young ones are afraid, "Well, if we take a season off from soccer, they're gonna, like, lose their skill," and it's like, "No, they're actually gonna come back better and refreshed."
Yeah. No, yeah, I agree. I think it's, I don't know, I think just like kind of what you said, I think our childhood has been so different than what childhoods are now with and with parents. And I think parents are a big reason for that. They're like, okay, I want my kid to be really good at soccer, so I'm only going to focus on soccer their whole childhood. But really, like when I was younger, I was playing every sport, and that's what made me a great soccer player because I was like just athletic. I was all around. I was cutting. And it all transferred from basketball, from lacrosse, and everything. So I think that's really important to make sure that your child's an overall athlete. And when they do start, you seeing them progress in a sport, then yes, turn them to club. Like I didn't play club for, I played a little bit of basketball club, but I essentially just played club for soccer for the long run. The other sports were just like LTRC rec and competitive and whatnot, but it wasn't, I played a little bit of basketball club, like I mentioned, but soccer was my long term, like main sport. But yeah, I mean, I think like Anson at the end of the day, just he loves athletes for sure.
And I'm assuming most of the girls on the team also dabbled in their childhood and were, like, superstars at everything else as well.
Yeah, yeah. It was funny too because in the off season they would do pick up basketball, and each there would be teams created, and the soccer girls would go play basketball for fun in this competitive UNC outside. I think it was just a fun thing to do, and they would all play basketball. So yeah, everyone was definitely an athlete. Like no one, if you threw them a different ball to do something, they would just pick it up really fast.
I love that. Now, describe your freshman season at UNC. How did you do? What did playing time look like? Any, like, accolades?
I went into freshman year basically just playing myself. Like I was a creative player. I was a forward. I wasn't scared to take people one on one, get shots off. And I think that's what really made me stand out was because you see people that are older in the college, like, sophomore, junior, senior, they start losing what got them committed to where they were at. So I think freshman year was really a year where I was able just to play freely as myself, as Bridget, and I started all senior year. Basically, in the beginning of my senior year was funny. So I, at first, like I'm a freshman, so I have to make my way to the starting lineup and everything. But for the first couple games, he'd sub me in and I'd score 2 goals. So he like thought it was funny, like if I started out, then I would come in and score 2 goals every time. Um, but freshman year, I remember just not I remember just being like, I'm excited to play. Like I'm excited to show my stuff. I wasn't nervous. I remember one of the I think it was Heather O'Reilly. She wrote the freshmen a letter, and it was basically, I know you're probably nervous, but kick butt, and I remember when they were however that letter was, I remember saying out loud, like, I'm not nervous. I'm so ready to play. I remember having that like attitude. And I think that was like really good to have as someone that was young. Like, I'm ready to play. I'm so excited. Like, I just put me out on the field, like, let's get it, and just kind of throw away the nerves. So freshman year was great. I started every game after the first couple games. I got All American, and that was like the year that I was like in the finalists for, I'm blanking on the name of the trophy, but basically a lot of seniors get it. But that was like the year that I was freshman of the year, as ACC freshman of the year, first team ACC, and like a bunch of different stuff. So freshman year was the year that I felt like I was definitely free in myself. And then yeah, like sophomore, junior, senior year came around. We had some English players come in. They were really good, and I think it definitely changed the environment a little bit in a good way, because it was definitely like, you're going to make it. English players are so different. They literally live and breathe soccer. Like me, I didn't grow up like watching soccer. Like I grew up watching like football with my family. But for, like, the English girls, they came in and they were just watching, like, they had such crazy soccer IQ and everything, so,
Mhm.
like, one of the girls that came when I was a sophomore as a freshman was Alessia Russo, and she's had an insane career. She plays for, I think, Arsenal now, and then we had Emily Fox come in, she's on the US full team right now, so the class below me were, awesome, so it was really cool to play with them my sophomore, junior, and senior year.
That's really interesting, and I totally forgot about how there's more international players coming in, and that also puts things into perspective, like playing for a school like this. Not only are you competing against the other US national team players, but then you're competing against all the beasts who are over in England and Europe and all the other countries now too. I mean, there's like Japanese people coming in,
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
Brazilians coming in,
yeah.
but I think it's great you had such an amazing freshman season, then these other girls come in. How did you continue to really level up and not get complacent and continue to have great seasons? Like, was there anything, like, different that you changed? Did you focus on nutrition more or, like, anything else you added in?
I think the biggest thing was just making sure that you're constantly getting better, as simple as that is. So if it was staying after practice, getting more shots off, because now you're with a group of like former US players, like youth US players you played with. It's all about that getting those extra touches in, and also just like getting along with everyone, because that's really important. If you're like the odd one out, like you're not going to flow with the team and you're not going to become your best self. So it's also the whole like culture of UNC. Like you want to make sure that you really sink in with that, because that's going to make you the best player. So it's also growing your development as a soccer player, as an athlete, but also your character, so you can grow like fully as a person on and off the field, to make sure you're 100% on the field. So I think when all these new players would come in every year, I mean, it's definitely was different, because I love being the freshman with all these older girls. But then when you're the older girl with all these younger kids trying to like get at your spot, it was definitely like, okay, you can either be like a certain way, or you can welcome them and be like cool with them and help them. And so that's how I turned it into, like, with Alessia, like I would stay after with her, we would get shots off and just like take advantage of the strengths of even the younger girls and the older girls, and being like, hey, can you work on this with me? You're really good at that. And then learning from all these different aspects of everyone. And when you do it like that, instead of being like comparing yourself and whatnot. And I'll definitely say, like, I'm not perfect. I definitely at what points was like comparing myself. But if you put that to the side and just say, okay, if I can use these girls' strengths to help me, and then I can do the same for them, that's when my development like really started to grow. And especially senior year, I think that was like the year where I was like fully myself, like 100% with my character on the field, off the field, and everything. So that was definitely my probably one of my favorite years at UNC.
Mhm. Now, your career didn't end after UNC, so let's kinda talk about that transition into pro. How did you make that happen? What's the process there?
Yeah, so I mean, it's the funniest thing too. It's the same way when I was at UNC. Like I didn't even know, like, I didn't even watch NWSL that much. I didn't even think about it. Like I was like playing at UNC and I was just focused on UNC. And when we were older, that's when I was realizing, okay, like I could be playing pro. So when I was like, okay, I guess I'm playing pro. Like, yes, I'm getting this degree, but I'm also going to be playing pro. So now I had to take summer classes. So I took 2 summer classes every summer online. There was girls that stayed at UNC and did it in person. I wanted to be back home with my family in Baltimore, so I took everything online. And the draft was in December, and so I knew I had to graduate in 3.5 years. So that's why I took all those classes, and then I got drafted. Thought I was going to get drafted to DC and be close at home, but I got drafted to Houston Dash and had my career start there. And it was definitely weird being far from home and whatnot. And the season is literally like 9 months out of 12 months. So it's a long season. So it's definitely a lot different than the college world for sure.
Mhm. So now you're in the real world and you I feel like everyone dreads the real world when they're done soccer, but I think it's fun, like especially if you have your own thing like you do. So kind of get into what you do now and how you're taking what you learned from like all these years of being a competitive athlete into your career.
Yeah, I definitely think it's an advantage. Like, I always hear in the business world, there's only the 1% of people I could say they're professional athletes. So I definitely use that in the business world. And I definitely think that separates me from a lot of people is just having that because I've learned so much. And being able to get to that position of being a professional athlete is definitely something that you realize, wow, I've learned so much in all of these years, on and off the field. And honestly, like way more off the field, like how to be a good leader, how to be a good communicator, how to have great work ethic, how to get through obstacles, and like everything. And I think the culture of UNC really developed me the best as someone entering into the business world. I'm a realtor here in Maryland, so that's what I focus on is I sell houses and whatnot. But it was the culture of UNC that really got me there. And it sounds so cheesy, but it's so true because Anson, we had book meetings. So before like early morning practices, he would give us like a business book or a character book or all of these different things. Like one of them was like the 7 habits of being a successful or
Or
something like,
highly is it the, 7
oh, highly,
habits of highly successful people?
yeah. So
I
that was, I
forget who
remember that
wrote
was one of,
that.
yeah, that was one of the books. Atomic Habits was another
Yeah,
book.
Atomic Habits, James Clear, right? I think
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah.
funny because
It's a good one.
I'm like actually reading these books now. When you're in college, you're like, okay, I have to like, see if I know, skim through the chapters. So when we go have this
That's so
book meeting,
cool he gave those to you though.
oh
Like, that's
yeah, so
awesome.
he was very very big on character development, and so I think that's really transferred me. And one of the scariest things too is like not only are you judged in practice with a competitive cauldron, every drill you do, it's basically on a piece of paper the next day where this is where you're at on each drill, but it's also people rate your character. So every, yeah, it's
Oh, I
crazy.
didn't know that. I just thought it was the competitive cauldron with, like, stats and, like
No, no, so
yo, that did
no.
that get weird? Like,
Oh, yeah, because everything,
I had no clue, but that's
yeah,
awesome.
it's crazy. So he was so big on development as a human. And so we would rate each other on each other's character. So he would have quotes and words for different aspects of a character and a person. And we had not anonymously voted for every, voted 1 through 5 for every person. And then you would get your results back. And you obviously could share it or not share it, but he would always announce like the person with the best character. So it seemed to be almost like one of the same girls. One of the girls we expected every time they were like the nicest person. So that was like a hit when when you're like, oh wow, this is how people think of me or whatever. Or, oh, I'm doing really good here. Or wow, I really need to work on this aspect of me. It really is like, okay, so we're a team. We need to get better with each other. These are the people that are around you all the time, so they know you. And so I think that really developed me as well because I'm getting feedback from people that are around me all the time. And I think that's the same thing in the business world is that when you enter into whatever you're going to do, you need to realize how to become your best self and how to mold in the environments that you're in. And all of that was exactly how Anson created this culture at UNC and why it's so successful because it's not just the development you as an athlete, but as you as a person outside. Like he's very stern on making sure that you're ready for the real world. Like you're going to be dealing with a lot of people and you want to make sure that you're the best person that you can become. So he was very stern on that. And I think that's 100% because of UNC and their environment.
One common theme I'm just hearing from this conversation is also that kinda, like, innocence where you're, like, not really thinking about, like, the next thing or, like, forcing these opportunities in your soccer career and your regular career. It's just, like, you're trying to be your best self, you're becoming a master at your craft, and if you're good, you get discovered, and that's what happened to you, and I'm seeing too much now, a lot of young kids and even some parents, like, forcing, like, "You need to play at UNC," and not really, like, focusing on, like, just being good, and you're gonna get seen if you're that good and if you're a UNC player, like, you will get found, or, like, in business, you will get clients if you're good at what you do, if you have good character, and I think this is just such an important lesson.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think parents need to just let their kids be kids. I always say that when you're forcing your kid to do stuff. at a certain level. I mean, obviously, you want your parents to get you out of your comfort zone and everything because they see that potential, but it's really going about it the right way. No kid's the same. So you have to make sure that you deal with how your kid is the way that some kids are okay with you being, I mean, this is just as athletes too. Like, even at UNC, some players are really good at you being straightforward with them and you telling them and yelling at them. Like, they're fine with that. They can brush it off. Then there's other people that do not like that. So you just have to realize, like, as a parent, you're also a coach. So you have to realize how, like, how you talk to your child to motivate them and get them to be their best self. So I think that's the number one thing, is just not putting too much pressure. Let your kid just enjoy, their sport and whatnot, and just motivate them and be there for them through everything, and they'll thank you for that. And especially the days that your kids don't want to go to practice and you pushing them and getting them to practice, like, it's those little things of, having a good balance of, like, okay, how do I get my kid to be really good but also support them and be a really good parent at the end of the day. So I think that's a really good point you made.
I think that's such a great note to end on, and honestly, I could talk for, like, 3 more hours about soccer and your career and business and everything, but I think if people have questions, they should definitely follow up with you. I You have so many followers on Instagram. I even messaged you, I was like, "I hope she responds," and then it's like, "Oh, she responded." So, Bridget is accessible. So, if people wanna find you, where can they find you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram. It's BridgetIsaten. So it's like Bridget is a 10. Don't make fun of me. My friend made it for me in middle school. I've never changed it.
No judgment.
No judgment. Yeah, so just, you can always message me, DM me. I always have kids all the time messaging me about, even kids here in Baltimore, they're looking to go to college, and the parents have questions for me about the whole recruiting process and everything like that. So any questions, I'm always available. I'm always here to give back. So anything you need, feel free to reach out and don't hesitate.
And do you do any, training just on the side for, like, in person in Baltimore area or remote?
So I do soccer training. So I it's funny because I don't announce it too much because I just want to have a small pool of people, because I am a full-time realtor here in Maryland. So but I do trainings with people at, like, local middle schools or turf nearby, and love I have, like, the same girls I've been training for a long time. So it's been super fun to see their development for sure. And I think it's so important to, like, give back into the sport. So even though I am a full-time realtor, I always make time for people that reach out that want to train and whatnot. So if you definitely have that in you to want to reach out to me on that, that's totally something we can make happen as well.
Brilliant. Well, everyone, I think this was such a fun episode, and I'm sure you guys learned a lot. So if you enjoyed, please leave a comment, tell us your story, your dreams, where you want to play in college. And if you need more detailed advice, feel free to reach out to Bridget or myself. But Bridget, thank you again. And everyone, I'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you.